Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are making a sweater. It is Sweater in the Day. You will love making this sweater so much because it takes a day. It's like literally so quick. It is using a super chunky yarn, super bulky yarn, a size 6, and a 12mm hook. But if you don't have a 12mm hook and a size 6 yarn, you can do it with worsted weight yarn and a 7mm. It's the exact same pattern. You just have to do a few more rows. It might be a sweater in 2 days. If English isn't your first language, you can click on this gear on the video and scroll through to find your preferred dialect. And this easy-to-follow step-by-step crochet tutorial is available in both right and left-handed, so please check the description box below to find the version that suits you best. And if you want to follow along with the written pattern, all of my patterns are written in plain English and available on my website, secretyarnery.com. To make this gorgeous sweater, you will need yarn. I'm using Puzzle Wool Chunky from Ice Yarns. It is a size 6 super bulky yarn. Really fabulous using a 12mm crochet hook. I used 600 grams or 402 meters for my sweater. Or if you are using a worsted weight yarn, I used 500 grams or 825 meters and a 7mm crochet hook. So that is about how much yarn you're going to need. Get a little bit extra just in case you want to edge it more or you want to make it bigger or just your stitches are a different size than mine. So I'm using a 12mm crochet hook. You will also need a needle for sewing in your ends and a pair of scissors and a handful of stitch markers. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off and let's get started. We're going to start by making a magic ring, so you can do that any which way you like to, but how I do it, I lay that tail over my non-dominant hand and just hold it onto my ring finger, wrapping it around my top 2 fingers, making an X, and around that 3rd finger again, just holding it loosely underneath my thumb. Turn your hand over and you will have a short strand and a long strand. Grab your crochet hook, hook side facing down, slide it underneath the short strand and on top of the long strand. Bring the long strand under, point the hook towards yourself with that loop up on the fat part of your hook, slowly releasing your thumb so that long strand can slide, looping or grabbing the long strand, turning your hook, just pinch everything that's underneath your hook and bring that long strand through and let go. There is your magic ring. Chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. And into our ring, we're going to do sets of 3 double crochets. So wrap your yarn and make 2 double crochets because our chain counts as our first double crochet. So 2 double crochets. Chain 2. And 3 more double crochets into the center of that ring. We want to be going over our tail so we can shrink it up later, and we want to sew our tail in also. So working over our tail the whole time. So there is 2 sets of 3, chain 2, and 3 more double crochets into the center of our ring going over our tail. Chain 2. If your tail gets short, just give it a little pull. And then just hold it along with that ring so we can be working over it. And 3 more double crochets. We want a total of 6 sets of 3 double crochets with a chain 2 in between. So there is another set of 3, chain 2, and 3 more double crochets. So there is 5 sets of double crochets. Make sure your tail is still out there. Slide those stitches back if you need to make some more room. And chain 2, 1 and 2, and our last 3 double crochets into the center of that ring. Now, if I'm going too fast or too slow, you can hit that gear on the video right there and slow me down or speed me up. So there is our 6 sets. You just want to count that you have 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now to join, we're going to chain 1, And we're going to do a single crochet to join because we want to be in the center of our corner. So we have our first double crochet that we made is right there. We want to be going in to the stitch before, or that chain before, which is right here. And we want 2 strands on the top of our hook, just like that, and single crochet to join. Now find that center. So we have our sets of 3 on each side. Just hold that open with your fingers and thumb. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. And now I want to make 1 double crochet into this chain, or this stitch right here. So not into our double crochets. I just want to work right into that stitch before. I don't want to work into my corner. We were going to be working into our chains for this pattern. So just slide your hook in and make 1 double crochet into that very first little bit, that little stitch right before our real stitches right there. If it's difficult, you can still work into that chain space like usual, but this will help us have nice small corners or nice small spaces for our sweater. If you are new, you can pop a stitch marker into this space here. That is our corner space, just so when we are working our way around, we know that that is our corner right there. Now into each of these 3 stitches, right here, those are our stitches. We're going to be making 1 double crochet into each. So just pop your hook straight into that stitch, both strands of the stitch on your hook, and make 1 double crochet into each stitch. So for this row, there will be 3 double crochets into our stitches. Now into our corner, we're going to be working into our chains. So our first chain is right here, and our second chain is right there. So we're going to go into the first chain. We always want 2 strands on the top of our hook. This is optional, but it makes your corner look smaller. Instead of looking big, it kind of minimizes our corner spaces. So into that first chain, we're going to do 2 double crochets. Chain 2, and into the second chain, right there, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So same as a granny square or a granny corner, except we're working into our chains. It will really help our corners look a lot smaller. See how it keeps that space small right in here? That is because we worked into the chain and not into the big space. But if it's difficult for you to work into your chain, you can work into the space. This is just my preference. I think it looks really nice for a finished garment. And now into each of our stitches along the side, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to do 1 double crochet into each. And if I'm going too fast or too slow, just hit that gear on the video and slow me down or speed me up, or even pause and get caught up. So into our corner, into the first chain right there, we're going to be doing our 2 double crochets and 2 double crochets into that next one as well with a chain 2 in between. So into the first chain, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, 1 and 2, and 2 double crochets into that next chain. Just sliding it onto your hook, 2 strands of your chain on the top of your hook, and make 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. And now you can pause the video and repeat that all the way around. So each side gets 1 double crochet into each stitch, and corners get 2 double crochets into the first chain, chaining 2, and 2 double crochets into the second chain. So repeat that on all sides of your round, and I'll meet you when we get back to our stitch marker. When you get back to where your stitch marker is, you can pop that out. And now we're just going to go in right here and make our 2 double crochets to finish off that corner. And then to join, we're going to join with a chain 1, and we're going to single crochet into the top of that chain to join. So we're going to single crochet right into the top of our chain, 2 strands on our hook, 1 single crochet. So that finishes round 2. And to start round 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. We want to be making our first double crochet into this chain right here. So we're going to have 2 strands on the top of our hook and make 1 double crochet. You can pop a stitch marker in there if you are new to crochet, and it just helps you recognize that corner when you're working your way around. And now we're going to be doing something a bit different for this row. Our corners are going to be the same, but along the side, we are going to be working into this little loop right down here. Just that loop. It might be a bit hard to see with this yarn, but it is the loop below your stitch. Just that little baby front loop, including this last guy over here. So it looks like this. We're just going to be going in, slide that lower loop onto your hook, and that is where you're going to be making your double crochet. Just into that 1 loop that's hanging down below your stitch. 1 double crochet into each of these front loops. Right like that, all the way along your row. And at the end of your row, we are going to go in to this last one, which is right there. So it almost looks like it's in our corner, but that is our last double crochet into the stitch, well, into the front loop. It's our last double crochet of the row. That gives us this really pretty finished edge on the other side, that cute little braid. Now into our corners, we're going to do that the same as usual. So into the first chain, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chaining 2, 1 and 2, and 2 double crochets into that second chain. The second one is easier to work into than the first. And now again, on each side, we're going to be working into that front loop right down there. So we're just doing our double crochets into 1 strand of yarn for this side. And don't forget that last one at the end of our row. There's our corner, and there is that last loop. Just poke it onto your hook, and 1 double crochet into each front loop all the way along the side. And our last one before the corner. That can be the stitch that you forget sometimes, so always remember before the corner that you work into that last front loop. Now into our corners, we're going to do corners the same way. So 2 double crochets into the first chain, 1 and 2, chaining 2, and 2 double crochets into the second chain, 1 and 2. So now you can pause the video and keep working along, working into the front loops only for this round on the sides, and remembering by the time you get to the end, to the corner, you have to go into that last front loop, which is right before our corner space. right here. So always remember that last stitch to work into that front loop that almost looks like it's in the corner. And then corner is the same as we're doing for the entire pattern. 2 double crochets into the first chain, chaining 2, and 2 double crochets into the second. So pause the video, keep working around, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back to where we started, we still have to work into this last stitch. You can pop out that stitch marker, and we have to make our stitch, remember this stitch here, the one right before our corner. We have to remember that one too. So just go in and along the side and pull up one strand, what will be the front loop of that stitch. We're going to make it into the front loop, just like that, and make your last front loop only double crochet. And now into our corner, or into that stitch, that chain, we're going to go right in there and make our 2 double crochets to finish off round 3. 1 and 2. Just like that. We're going to join in the same way, so with a chain 1 and a single crochet into that top of our chain to join right there. So just pop your hook in, 2 strands of that chain on the top of your hook, and make 1 single crochet to join. And that finishes round 3. To start round 4, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. Remember, we want to hold that corner space open so we know where it is. Turn your work, and into this very first chain, 1 double crochet into that first chain. And now for this round, we're just going to be doing regular double crochets into the stitches. So just into both strands of those V's at the top. We're just going to be going in and making 1 double crochet into each, just like usual. And then for the repeat, we're just going to be alternating. So for row 4, we're going to be working into the stitches. So the even rows work into the stitches. And for the odd rows, we're going to be working into those front loops only, that little stitch down at the bottom. So now you can pause the video and keep working along. 1 double crochet into each stitch. Corners, 2 double crochets into the first chain, chaining 2, 2 double crochets into the second. And then for the next round, we're doing the exact same thing, except working into the front loops only. So pause the video and keep working along, and I will meet you when your hexagon is the right size for you. Now, as it is growing, you can tell it's about the size you want it to be when folded like this into kind of a square shape. Across represents-ish your shoulders. So from one shoulder to the other, that is a good time to stop even a little bit before. If you think you're wider than this, go ahead and stop when you think it's a little bit too small. And how you want to do that is fold it in half, just like this. So we're folding it kind of like a boot, or half of a letter T, just like this. So we have our 2 sides here at the top. This is going to be our shoulder. So now go ahead and get a bunch of your stitch markers. And we're just going to stitch this together just with stitch markers. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. You don't have to line up your stitches. But I do start into that first space of both pieces. And I end into this corner space of both pieces at the other side. And then you just put your stitches in wherever you feel, like every few stitches. And you can even work into the space. You don't have to go into the yarn if you don't want. And you don't have to line up your stitches. We are really just testing the size of it. So we're going to use our stitch markers to hold it together while we try it on. Generally, at the beginning and the end, I pop in an extra stitch marker because that is where it could open up a bit more. All right, now let's go try it on and see if it fits. So slip on that sleeve, just where those stitch markers on the top of your shoulder, down your arm, and just check around your armpit area, your underarm, if it is big enough, but you don't want it too big. It's going to stretch. So just make sure you have a little bit of movement and just hold the center stitch marker at the very back of your neck, like just on one of your vertebrae. So that is where it's going to be sitting when you're wearing it. And then just judge the armpit if you need to add another row or take a row off, and just customize it right here. So now we know it's the right size. Go ahead and make a second piece exactly like this. I'm keeping the yarn attached. I'm not fastening off, so that when we come back to join our pieces together, we have our working yarn already there. So just go ahead and make one more piece the exact same size as this one. So now I've made my two pieces that are the same size. Now we want to take a little bit of notice of where we have joined. It's not noticeable, but on some other yarns you can tell that this corner is a little bit different. So we're going to have this going along the very back of our sweater. So the back of our sweater is going to match, and the rest of our sweater is going to look absolutely perfect. So your two working yarns are going to be at the bottom center of your sweater, like that. So our join is at the bottom of our sweater. And now go ahead and pin the second panel together, like that. So now we have our two panels, but remember the back is where we have our stitch markers where our yarn is attached. So just go ahead and join up those two sides where our stitch markers are, because this is going to be the back of our sweater. And I'll try it on again, just making sure that you like how it fits. It's big enough, it's not too big, it's not too small, and then we are ready to join it up. So now you've tried it on, you're sure it's the right size for you. We are ready to start joining it up. Now there's a couple different ways you can join, and it depends on how experienced or how comfortable you are with crochet. If you're an experienced crocheter, you can frog back this last row and do a join as you go all the way up. Or you can also just stitch it together, and I'll show you how. Just get your back panel, that's where we're going to start. Get your back panel happy. And we're going to use one of these working yarns. Now we want to lay out our yarn. We want to go 5 times because we're going to do the back of our sweater and also one sleeve. So there is 3. We want to do 4 and 5. And then go ahead and cut your yarn. So we have 5 strands, the width of our sweater. And now go ahead and thread your needle. I'm going to be using a blunt tip needle for this, but if you have sharp tip needles, you can just stitch with the eye of your needle. It'll be the same as a blunt tip. So just pop that yarn through your needle and double it up quite a way. It'll be easier for us. Now we can take out our stitch markers we had for joining and our stitch marker with our working yarn. Just pull that one up and start by threading through that. We want to finish off that stitch. So we have closed it off. You don't have to pull it too tight. We don't want it to totally be a knot. And then we can go through the same stitch on the other side. I'm leaving that stitch marker in just so I can identify that later. We can always use that yarn for working around the outside of our sweater in a nice little crochet. So I'm leaving this other yarn attached. And then to make sure your stitches are going to line up at the end, we can just match up a few of them. You can even just put your fingers between the pairs and just kind of walk up like a ladder. 1 stitch on the back, 1 stitch on the front. 1 stitch on the back, 1 stitch on the front, all the way up, just kind of matching them up. And that's an easy way to check that you have the right stitch count. So I've gone through that stitch, I've gone through the stitch marker on the other side, and now we're going to look for our pretty little V's. So get your work so those V's are sandwiched or side by side, and we're just going to be working into each pair of stitches. And we want to go through both V's of both sides. So that's 1. Here would be number 2 and 3. And we just keep working our way along into each pair of stitches. I'm going to start by going back into this first little slip stitch and back into that stitch. Just because it's at the bottom of our sweater, anywhere on the edges always gets more stress. So I'm just going, but you're not going to pull too tight. You're going to leave it a little bit like relaxed. You want it to feel like a crochet stitch, not like a sewing machine went through your garment. So now into each pair of those stitches. So there's 4 loops on our needle. We're just going to whip stitch. So that means we're going in from one side and out the other side the whole way. We're not switching around. So I have that next loop on my needle, and I'm going to look for the next loop and go into both pair. If it's hard to see your stitches, just separate the panels and find the next stitch that you haven't worked into, and then find the next stitch on the other panel, and that is your pair. So just keep going along, making sure your stitches aren't too tight or too loose. And how you can check, you can open it up, give it a little bit of a pull, and if you see your stitches looking like that, where there is like a big loop, that's too loose. You want it to just be looking like crochet. At the end of your row, even if your stitches aren't perfect, just join them as they are, and then work into that chain as well. Now, we can keep joining our sleeve. Pick a sleeve you're going to join. One we have to join new yarn, and one we can keep joining. You can also check your join and see how you like it. I think it's pretty great. This is the outside now. It looks so good. Now to do the sleeve, we're going to inside it out. So just pick a sleeve and inside it out. Because we worked on the inside of our sweater, we want to work on the inside of the sleeve. And yes, you can take out your stitch markers. I'm going to leave the first and last ones in, but the rest of them I'm going to pop right out. So now to start joining on the sleeve, we have our 2 corner spaces. So I'm going to take that stitch marker out now, but I'm going to keep track of those spaces with my fingers. And now just line up our first stitch. So our first stitch is going to be right there, the 2 that match. And then we have our chain. So I'm going to come straight across and just start joining into that very first stitch and back into where we joined in the middle. Just remember, always where we begin and we end, it can take a lot more stress on the garment. I'm going to go into each chain. And there's 2 chains, the first chain and the second chain. And now we'll make sure our stitches are facing the right way around. And now we're just going to go into each pair of these stitches the same way, the same amount of tension. We want it to still stretch a little bit like crochet, but also not fall apart. So pause the video, keep working along, and I'll meet you when you have joined up this entire row. When you get to the end of your row, just keep joining your stitches all the way along. And remember, we also want to join into our chain. I'm going to join into that last stitch twice, just to make sure if that gets some tension on it or some stress, it's going to be fine. And then pop out your stitch marker. We want to go in to that first chain on both sides. And we want to do that twice as well, just to reinforce that bottom seam. And now we can sew in our tail just like we normally would. So we can inside it out. So pretty. And now go ahead and do that on the other sleeve. Now that tail where we began, let's undo that knot we made and sew that one in as well. Remember, we can use this tail to strengthen our collar. It's going to be right at the back of our neck. Shrink down that magic ring in your armpit area and sew in your tail. I like to go around the circle one way and then the other way to make sure that it's not going to come out. And you want to do this for both of your magic rings, both of your centers, just like that. going to do a row of single crochet all the way around our sweater just to help it not stretch out too much where we are actually wearing it, pulling on it, and it can help keep its shape. So just turn your sweater upside down, and we're going to be going into the back of our stitches. That'll help our edge not curl. If we work into the front of our stitches, our work can curl in the same direction. So flipping it will help keep it nice and flat. So I'm just going to insert my hook right into that stitch, and I'm going to bring my yarn back, and now we are ready to start crocheting. So I'm going to chain 1, and now into our first stitch. So I'm not working into this chain. We're kind of skipping it and moving straight over into this stitch. That'll help the center of our sweater at the back just kind of stay nice and snug. So into that very first stitch, 1 single crochet, and now 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way along the bottom edge of your sweater, just like that. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way along, and I'll meet you when we get to our first corner. When you get to your corner, we're just going to work into that first chain with 2 single crochets. I'm not going to do any chaining. We're just going to go straight into the second chain and make 2 single crochets. If you want your corner extra pointy, you are welcome to do a chain in there in between those stitches, but that is what it'll look like if you do it my way. And now keep working along this side of your sweater, 1 single crochet into each stitch, and I will meet you when we get up to our join. When you get to the collar or the back of the neck, still work into every stitch, 1 single crochet, and we're going to just keep doing the same thing. So 1 single crochet into the chain, 1 single crochet into the next chain, so we're going to go right over here, 1 single crochet into that chain. It's a bit snug. And you want to keep some tension on these stitches because this is there's going to be a lot of pulling on this area around the back of your neck. So we don't want to do big stitches. We want some tension on that yarn. Now the next spot is right over here. So the other side of our join. We'll go into that chain. A little single crochet, and now 1 single crochet into this stitch. And now we are back down going along the front side, so 1 single crochet into each stitch. So now pause the video, keep working along 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way along this side, and I'll meet you when we get to the corner. Now when we get to our corner, we're going to do the same as we did before. So 2 single crochets into the first chain, 1 and 2. Rotate your work a little bit, and into that second chain, the same thing, 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. Now into each stitch all the way along, 1 single crochet into each stitch until you reach where we began in the center of our back. So pause the video, keep working along, and I'll meet you when you get back to where we started. So our last single crochet is right into that stitch right before the join. We're into that space. And now I'm going to do an invisible join to join. So don't slip stitch, don't join in any way with our crochet hook. Just go ahead and cut your yarn. We want to leave a long enough tail to sew in with a needle. And pull your hook up and your yarn through that last single crochet we made without joining. Grab your needle and thread it. If you're using a sharp tip, just use the eye of your needle to start this invisible join. And you'll see this first stitch right here, this V-stitch. We're going to go right underneath both strands of it, just the same place we would if we were slip stitching. But instead of using our hook, we're using our needle. So just slide that yarn underneath both of those stitches and keep an eye on where it's coming from. Right here. And we want to go back down where it is coming from. Right there. That's it. That was the hard part. That's your invisible join. Now shrink it up. We don't want to make it too tiny, but we do want it to look like the rest of those stitches, just like that. So now, with your needle, go ahead and sew in that tail, just looking for yarn that matches and adjusting it while you sew it in, just to make sure it hasn't gotten too loose or too big. That is our join right there. I think it looks just like the rest of those stitches. So now I can go back and forth underneath the matching yarn and sew in your tail. Just like that. Cut off your tail. To finish your sleeve, and you're going to have to do this on both sleeves. So fold your sweater nice so it is laying down nice and flat. Your underarm is here, shoulder is up there. Just grab the bottom of your sleeve. We want to put our hook into any of those bottom stitches. Just pick one at the bottom of your sleeve, the underarm part of your sleeve. And that is where we're going to start. So grab your yarn, put a loop of yarn on your hook. Leave a long enough tail. We're going to have to sew that in. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail, just holding it along the back of your work, and chain 1. So that counts as our first single crochet. And now 1 single crochet into each stitch, all the way around, just like we did around our collar and bottom of our sweater. So 1 single crochet into each stitch. You can pause the video and get caught up. I will meet you when we get up here to the top of our shoulder where we did that join. Now when we get to that join area, I'm going to work into the chain. I'm going to start a single crochet into that chain before the join, but I'm going to leave it on my hook. So I've left that single crochet on my hook, and now into the chain on the other side of the join. I'm going to go in and start a second single crochet. So now I'll have 3 loops on my hook, wrap and take off all 3 loops, and that tightens up that little join. And now keep going 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around your sleeve, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back to where we started, I've done a single crochet into that last stitch. So the next stitch is where we joined our yarn and began. So I'm going to do another invisible join. So cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to comfortably sew in with a needle without joining. So just after that single crochet, pull your hook up and your yarn through that single crochet and thread your needle. Using the blunt end of your needle if you have a sharp tip, or the blunt end of your needle, but you can use the eye of your needle if you have a sharp tip. We're just going to go underneath these strands of yarn, just where we normally would be slip stitching. If you were going to slip stitch to join, we'd go into that very same stitch. So just slide your needle through, keeping an eye on where it is coming from, which is right there. And just slide your needle back down where it came from. So there is our invisible join. Now we're just going to shrink it up so it's about the right size, or the same size as the other stitches nearby. And now sew in your tail. Now go ahead, sew in your tails, and do the same thing on the other sleeve. And there is your sweater in a day. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video right there, and stay hooked.